Hello, welcome to SquashWarp episode 9. Here we have the Slider 2 probe on approach to Minmus. This is our first Minmus landing of this career. We're just doing a bit of a deorbit burn, getting down nice and low over the surface. We have something of altimetry scan on this, but I'm just eyeballing it. Our biggest challenge is going to be to find the biome that we want to land in, namely the poles, and also to not botch the landing because we have such a powerful engine compared to the surface gravity. I thought I would try using some of the Kerbal Engineer Redux surface information that we have, but I didn't really end up looking at it at all anyway. Going to use the full thrust for killing our orbital velocity just to be on the safe side, but I bet I'm going to slide that down later as we come in. Looks like we're over the poles, and the camera is changing as we reorient relative to the planet. And coming in, I turned on ground scatter so we could get a bit of a sense of how far away we are and see the nice sights of this little moon. Just a little bit of thrust. Yeah, we need that thrust limiter down, all the way down. We've got so much thrust. Okay, coming in, I see our shadow now. And just killing our velocity in little spurts rather than in the hardcore efficient single burn way. And we're down. And our landing legs do a little wobble, so we're just going to leave that on. We got 3 different science experiments, one of which has 2 versions, and that's all we have that we can do here, but it's going to be worth it. Minmus is a new place for us to visit, and we're going to be bringing this science home. And we just burn straight for escape because we don't really need to make a maneuver. We end up in a pretty inclined approach to Kerbin, but after some maneuver node testing, we determined that we're not really going to worry about it until we get to that descending node. We can fix it later. So let's switching back to the Galahad Mark IIb, and here we have Elstead, Dunbury, Wiltrid, Carey, Stachel, and Maffey Kerman. And I'm actually pausing and doing some math here because we've got a little bit of RCS left. And I'm off on the internet doing monopropellant math lookup and some calculations, looking in Kerbal Engineer to make sure I've got the right vessel mass display. It's got 2 numbers for me. It's got the empty and the current mass, but I wasn't sure which mass it was telling me, so I end up just burning the thrusters a tiny bit to see which number changes. So just using a little bit of the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation, just find out exactly how much delta V we have left with those 86 units of monopropellant, and it's not very much, it's like 70 something, assuming we burn the monopropellant first. Which is telling me that we don't really have the range on this space plane to rendezvous with something in a circular orbit. Did I say rendezvous? Yes, I did, because this craft is not done. We've been in orbit for a while. We've launched 2 probes. We've captured a 3rd and gathered its science. And now we're setting ourselves up to reduce our periaps, not for a return, but for a braking maneuver. We tried this on our space probe and we loved it. This one we're going to be even more conservative because while we're capable of re-entering in this craft, we really don't want to. We want to save our launches. So we're just going to reduce our periaps enough that we're going to skim through the atmosphere. We'll orient ourselves flat on. Now I've got to rotate. There's going to be a lot of rotating back and forth. The solar panels are on the top. We need to stay oriented that way until the last moment, and then we need to flip over and use the underside of the craft because I don't like the idea of re-entering top first. That just seems wrong. We're going to use the underside with the correctly colored surface there. So you can see our apoaps dropping down nicely. We've got a lot of drag from that wide surface area cutting through the atmosphere. It's actually going to take several of these braking burns. The first one makes the biggest change, and then each subsequent one is slightly less dramatic because of the way orbital characteristics work. So we're reducing our apoaps because we're going to be meeting up with another spacecraft that I have yet to launch. But after doing that math, I know that we can't really do the rendezvous ourselves in the space plane. So at this point, I'm formulating the rather bizarre plan, which will be the first time that I use a space station to rendezvous with an airplane. Oh, and I forgot to turn. Look at them spinning all over the place. Oh, these poor guys. They're doing the. They're a bit dizzy now. That's all right. Let's do one more braking burn, you guys. Or braking pass here. We're not stranded. We could come home whenever we want. We don't want to come home. We want to stay up here at a reasonable altitude. There's no reason to go up that high for anything other than meeting up with probes that come flying in out of space. I'm aiming to get our semi-major axis around, well, 120 kilometers of altitude, because that's the boundary for the higher time warp speeds. But first we need to switch over to Cooter 2 over here, which is on its way to Minmus, and I'm including this little section that I would normally have cut out, because not because I'm so proud of it, but because it was so frustrating with the the way that the maneuver node kept jumping around. But at 4 times speed, it doesn't seem nearly so painful. So anyway, we're just making some adjustments. I don't know how we got so far off, but I made the mistake of deleting the node, and I gotta get it back on there. It was like jumping onto my other orbit line. We were pretty well lined up for Minmus, but we kind of lost that maneuver that we had built previously, and I just spending some time setting it up, doing my little trick of switching over to the planet I'm aiming for. I'm pretty sure that's a pretty well-known trick there. Just burning a tiny bit every which way. We got plenty of delta V. I just want to come up right underneath and get a 90-degree-ish orbit around Minmus there. And let's switch back over to our space plane for, is this going to be another braking pass? Yes, it is. We are inside the atmosphere once again, just dipping in a few kilometers. And I've actually got us a bit rotated because I'm trying to reduce our inclination, but that doesn't really seem to have any effect at all. So it was a nice try, but we're not going to worry about that. And then we got a time warp for a while until the Space Center is directly under our descending node. And here we have our space station. We're using an identical lifter design to the Amazon spacecraft that went to the moon, which means that this is extremely capable, and that upper stage is going to have plenty of delta V, since it was designed to send a capsule and landing equipment and science all the way out to the moon. But it was lying around, and you know, I guess we'd made spares. I don't know. I like the idea of reusing rockets, even though I don't have Kerbal construction time, and I'm not worrying about money. So we got a bit of a steep ascent here, but it's fine. We're not worrying about it. Dropping off those liquid boosters there. I love the way they tumble along. We could try to recover them, but I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't matter at all. Now we're on only the skipper engine. I chose to unlock some structural parts rather than going on to the heavier engines, which is why we're reusing this lifter. We could just stick one mainsail on this thing and that would be all of our work. But we already had this designed, and the space station mass is less than the moon mission, so we're just making use of what's available. And doing a circularization burn, I think we're going to not quite make it on this single engine, so we're going to want to decouple, and once this runs out of fuel, and get onto that upper stage engine. There we go, plenty of thrust from the poodle. See our radiator trying to get rid of the excess heat from the engines, and here we are. We're in orbit. Oh, wait. Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. Action group, go back. Never mind. You didn't see that. Solar panels clipping into the side of the fairing base. Let's not worry about it. So now let's set up our maneuver. As usual, I'm just going to go ahead and do my inclination correction first, even though that's not the efficient way to go. just because then I can see what my encounters are going to be. Because you could be right next to the thing as far as a top view of your orbit's concerned, but if it's not inclined, the game won't give you your marker, and you can't plan your maneuvers. So, like I said, I'm going to use a space station to rendezvous with a plane, which just seems backwards to me, but we've just got so much capacity on this thing. It's currently unmanned, but we'll be fixing that momentarily as soon as we get these two vehicles docked in orbit. I switched over to the space plane because it has a higher apoapse, and that means we can use its higher time warp limits for half the time, which just makes this phasing just a little less painful. I could switch to something on the ground, but then I can't see what their close approach looks like. So as we pass through, there we go. It changes, probably just one more orbit. We'll get something somewhat workable. They're both labeled as ship icons. There we go. We got a nice close approach just by waiting. And we get a little peek of the lights. I feel like in the dark with the lights on, it looks like something out of a, well, I was going to say out of a Jules Verne novel, but I guess that that's up to your imagination what things in Jules Verne novels look like. But that row of three circular glowing windows just makes me think of something out of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Can't make up my mind about how bright I want the ambient light to be, so bear with me as the planet shine just keeps coming up and down. But I want to be able to capture it. The recording software does not do well with the darkness. The starbox in the background is just always being butchered. So, and I'm gonna cut out a lot of this maneuver messing around here. It's pretty clear what's going on. We just mess with it, and when we finally get it where we want it to be, we're just gonna warp along until our icon shows up. I built a maneuver for the rendezvous so that I know when to do the burn, because I have the tendency of flying past my targets if I'm not prepared. It's been a long time since I've actually smashed into something on approach. Normally, you're not actually close enough to do that. It's almost lucky. It's kind of like winning the lottery, except you lose all your spaceships. So, can't decide how I want this thing to be oriented. Why don't we put it, yeah, let's put it facing down. Let's turn on the lights. And now, Elsted, excuse me, Elsted Kerman and his apprentice Dunbury are going to perform the docking themselves using the remaining monopropellant. We've got enough left for this. I could probably do the docking just as easily with the space station, but this seems like more fun. Oh, there it is, coming up through the window. This is when the game starts to get really exciting, as well as, well, very slow motion. You know, this is sped up quite a bit, but we haven't unlocked the large docking ports. We're just using the small ones, and we got one on each end of the cargo bay. Those were used to launch the Cooter probes quite a while ago, because they've already, they're halfway to Minmus, one of them is. So using the Navy Fish docking port alignment indicator, I do not leave Kerbin without it. And as we approach, and we're going to slow down the recording a little bit so we can see what's happening. Just reducing our closing velocity and trying to, I've got it now on fine control, mostly because the side to side is very sensitive. I accidentally have, 50% more side to side thruster ports than top to bottom, so I kind of have to switch between fine control and regular controls. And we get a bit of a bump, which is not encouraging. It means that it's not quite fitting. I had to do pretty custom docking design there to feel like, I don't think it's lining up as hard as I tried in the VIB, but we feel the force. It's coming in, and we are docked. All right. our space shuttle has successfully rendezvoused with the Dol Guldur Space Station. That's not foreboding at all. Well, put it this way: Dol Guldur, right, from Lord of the Rings reference. It's not a happy place. It's sort of. I think the translation that I was finding the most was Hill of Dark Magic or Hill of Sorcery. But the direct translations, I'm going to just go ahead and say, as our crew gets transferred into the space station, I'm going to go ahead and say the place where we study the black of space. That works with the translation as far as I'm concerned. Really, it just is a fun-sounding name, and Stachel Kerman is going to hop out, and instead of just doing the regular transfer like everyone else, she wants to grab science that. So that's the science that we retrieved from the space probe that came back and we rendezvoused, and we're going to bring that into the lab so that it can be processed, because we've got 2 scientists, 2 engineers, and 2 pilots. So we can put our scientists in the lab and make some extra science out of the experiments that we come back. Believe it or not, I've never gotten a chance to use these new labs just because of the way that I hadn't been playing when the new game, when the new versions came out. Look at how that fits in there. It's kind of clipping, but it's so close that I guess it just accepts. It's good enough. Yes, quite happy with this. Nice, simple, monolithic station. I didn't need to send up multiple modules. We got everything we need. Room for 8, including the scientists. Plenty of windows. A couple solar panels. And we still have that transfer stage, which we might as well keep on there for now. Actually, we want to keep it because we want to correct this orbit once the plane goes home. So let's try out this lab. I'm looking to see if I can make the science reports pop up anywhere other than right in my face, but no luck. So this is me reading things up and thinking really hard about how I want to use this. When the behavior for the processing lab was updated to what it is currently, was about the same time that I took a very long hiatus from Kerbal Space Program, so I'm finally working on it. Elstead is going to come and grab, if you remember, we had 2 mystery goo reports from that space probe, and after jumping sideways off the ladder, he's going to bring one of them to the capsule so it can be recovered back at the Space Center, whereas the other report is going to stay in the science lab and have its science value increased by processing. He could have just transferred. I think he just wanted to go outside. I don't really know why we did that. Well, now that everyone is in space with plenty of life support, the mission for the space plane is finally coming to an end. We're going to let Elstead stay up there and take some rest for a little while, but he'll be flying that space plane back home in the next episode after we do some fuel transferring. I want to just have a little bit more of a buffer so that we don't get stranded out in space. But everyone else is going to stay in the lab, our scientists working away, and our engineers and Dunbury Kerman are also going to stay up there. We've got plenty of life support, and we're going to be sending up regular missions to resupply in any case. But those missions will have to wait for future episodes when we have more time. Thanks for joining us, and from Dol Guldur Space Station, everyone is signing off.